Hello, fellow Rel. How can I screw that up? I literally do that 5 times a day. All right. That's why I like going live with no edits. Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. I hope you are well. All right. In the news today, we have got the UN coming out and begging the global central banks pretty much to stop raising interest rates. But that's not the punchline. Oh no, I actually wish it was. They are giving more advice to the central banks or begging them to do certain things. But what they are proposing will, you guessed it, make matters far, far worse. And if we're not in a crisis situation right now, which we possibly could be, when you look at what's happening with Credit Suisse, with Deutsche Bank, with pretty much the entire continent of Europe, and we're not too far behind here in the United States with us most likely going into a recession and having serious problems with inflation rates and serious problems with interest rates in the real economy. So my point there is we're all kind of in the same boat, but just to varying degrees, right? So it's the UN coming out, the central planners, the global elite, the Davos types, the EU types, and saying, hey, central bank, this is what you need to do. This is your policy, or this should be your policy. And as rebel capitalists, and from watching my videos and just having common sense, you know that this will make the problem far, far worse. And if we're not in a crisis now, it'll most likely push us into a crisis in the next couple years. So let's get over to this article from CNBC. Let me do the screen share. There we go. Josh, I think, is on a plane right now, so I'll go ahead and make this happen myself. So we must change course. The UN warns that the world is on the brink of a recession. Well, first of all, thanks, UN, for the news flash, because anyone who is paying attention or has just the slightest amount of common sense knew this months ago. How about when the 2s and the 10s inverted? How about when the yield curve was 50 basis points inverted? How about when the yield curve was inverted all the way up to the 6 month and the 10-year? I think that kind of gave us a hint. But anyway, thanks for the warning, even though you're way late to the party, as always. Key talking points: monetary and fiscal policies in advanced economies, including continued interest rate hikes, could push the world toward a global recession and stagnation. What's the alternative, UN? That they just don't raise interest rates and the poor and middle class gets just hammered even further by consumer price inflation? They don't, of course, they don't tell you, or they make it seem as though there's a solution here, and that if we just did this, then everything would be okay. What they're not saying is there's a cost-benefit analysis that needs to be done. And there are no solutions, like Dr. Thomas Sowell teaches us. There are only alternatives. And the alternatives right now that we have are just choosing the least bad. And I don't know that stopping the interest rate hikes are the least bad option we have. I mean, hey, let's go back to the cerveza sickness, and we'll get into that in a moment with the global lockdowns and the supply chains. We could have avoided a lot of the problems we have. How about the sanctions against Russia? Well, that would have avoided a lot of the problems. My point is, most of the problems that we're dealing with today are self-imposed by the central planners and the authoritarians. And of course, they don't pay the price for being wrong. Oh no, it's the poor and middle class. Next key talking point: the global slowdown could potentially inflict worse damage than the financial crisis in 2008. Funny how when I say that, I'm called a fearmonger or a conspiracy theorist or a tinfoil hatter. But when the UN says it, well, then we as the financial media, well, we need to pay attention to this. Last key talking point, we still have time to step back from the edge of recession. Really? Because in the United States, we've had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. So I don't know what Rebecca would call that. She said, nothing is inevitable. We must change course, said UNCTAD Secretary General Rebecca Greenspan. Greenspan? Wouldn't that be interesting if her real last name is Greenspan and she just changed the spelling so she wouldn't be associated with Alan Greenspan? Anyway, let's get back on topic here. So this is just reiterating the key talking points. The main thing I want to point out is a couple paragraphs that are a little further down here. Let me find them. And wouldn't it be nice if my highlighter tool was actually working? Ah, yes. Basically, what they say is that the central banks need to stop raising rates. And what they need to do is focus more on supply side issues or supply side policy. And I just tweeted this out. And my point was, what's really great or what would be good for supply side economics? And here we go. Here's where they say it right here. It's not locking everyone in a cage for a year, destroying global supply chains. That would really help supply side economics. But unfortunately, the central planners didn't think about that when they were stretching or working out their authoritarian muscle in 2020 during the cerveza sickness. But so you say, and initially when you read this, you're like, okay, well, let's give them some credit because at least they're acknowledging the supply side of the problem, that we just don't have enough stuff, which usually they're just all on the demand. We need to create more demand. We need to create more demand. So, I want to give them one brownie point for even mentioning supply side economics. But that's where the brownie points end, because just like in Dumb and Dumber, that's what it was. They totally redeem themselves later on down in the article when they get into their actual policy suggestions for promoting supply side economics. And this is where it gets completely insane. And this is when you realize these central planners are absolutely clueless to the point where anything that they actually implement will make the matter far, far worse. So check this out. Here is what they suggest to really give a boost to the supply side of the economy. They say, we then call for a more pragmatic policy mix that deploys strategic price controls. So their solution to the supply problems that we have in the global economy, their solution includes price controls, which, as you guys know, from just having a basic amount of common sense, will make the matter far worse. In fact, if you asked any economist out there and said, what's the best way to destroy supply of something? They would say, well, limit the price. And we have seen this with rent control over and over and over again. And what's interesting about rent control and price controls for that matter is that it doesn't matter whether the economist is a Keynesian, an Austrian, a monetarist. It doesn't matter whether they're way on the left like Krugman or they're on the right, maybe like a doc. Well, I don't know if Dr. Thomas Sowell would be on the right, but more center right, maybe. It doesn't matter. This is one thing they all agree on. Price controls are very bad, and price controls lead to shortages. They don't lead to surplus. They don't lead to the production of more stuff. They lead to the production of less stuff. Then what's the next thing they suggest? Oh, a windfall profit tax. What's that going to do? Is that going to somehow, if you take the people that are creating the supply or the entities and you give them less money for cap X, how is this magically going to create more supply? Of course, it's not. It's going to create less supply. Antitrust measures. Okay. And then tighter regulation on commodity speculation. So you can see where they're going with this. It's the same old, it's the usual suspects that they always blame. Whenever the central planners have a problem, it's never a result of what they did. Oh, no. It's always because of those greedy speculators. You know, Joe Biden was saying this about gas prices. Well, it's because of those greedy speculators. I mean, we have heard this BS over and over and over again. I mean, we've heard this for hundreds of years, and it's never the truth. It's always a bold-faced lie. But yet the central planners just keep going back to their script, back to their playbook, and for some reason, obviously not rebel capitalists, but other people, average Joe and Jane, actually buy this nonsense. It completely blows me away. But the main takeaway for this video is I wanted to show you the problems they're pointing out. Then I wanted to back that up with their quote-unquote solutions to prove to you that the global elite will make whatever situation we are in right now, the global elite, the central planners, and the authoritarians, they will make the situation far, far worse. And if we're not already in an economic crisis, we will be in one in the next few years, assuming they continue to push these insane policies. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure that you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. See you in the next video.